today's show is the newly named chairman of the National Council for Mental Well-Being and a longtime Lifeways board member, Ed Woods. Hi, Ed.
Good morning. Good afternoon now.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
And good to see you.
Good to see you.
And congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's quite a humbling honor to be appointed to board. You know, this doesn't usually happen to people that look like me from a little small town like this, but it did, and I'm grateful for it and pleased, and I'm going to work really hard at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. So a national position, a national council. You've also served on statewide councils and here in Jackson on Lifeways, and it's been you've had a long term. You've put your you've put your time in 13 terms at Lifeways on the board.
Yes.
What was your interest in the first place in joining the board of Lifeways, and what has it been that's kept you at it all these years?
Well, as you know, I worked in manufacturing my whole life. I worked at the Max Steel plant until I retired in 2009. And when I got out of college, that's all I really wanted to do was work in manufacturing and working with engineering and work with in management and do those kinds of things. And I got that fateful phone call one day that my brother was sick. He was suffering from schizophrenia. We really didn't know what to do to help him. I don't think he was getting the treatment that he needed to get and the services that he needed to get. So I met with my good friend Jim Shotwell, and he was chairman of the county board at the time. And it was not an easy road to get on the community mental health board at the time. And I talked with Jim. He said he'd work with me. I filled out an application, and I've been there ever since. So it was his illness that motivated me to do this. And he's, people ask me, why have you continued to do this so many terms? And I said, he can't give up being sick, and why should I retire from doing this? He can't give that up. So he passed away this past December, and he was quite ill when he finally passed away. But he lived a very long life with this disease, and he did the best that he could with it, and we were all very proud of him, and he did a really good job of keeping himself safe and trying his best to be independent.
Yeah, and I think you experienced this in your family, that having a mental illness carries with it stigma. That really is something that Lifeways has been working on. As long as I know, to fight the misperception that that mental illness is something that's no different from physical illness.
That's right. When you have a mental illness, we've gone through different times during the history of Lifeways since I've been on the board where people have complained about them being in the library, or people have complained that they're going to other public areas when they're obviously mentally ill. Why don't you put them somewhere where they have a right to be there? My brother was a well-traveled Jackson bus rider, and everybody that rode the bus knew my brother, and he went to all those public places. You might run into him one day at Walmart, you might run into him one day at Myers. He'd get from one end of town on the other, and people that rode the bus and saw him on there, he said he was always very polite, and that was what he wanted to do, and that was his life. So that stigma that they carry is really unfair in a lot of cases, and it gets perpetuated by people, but Lifeways works really hard to try to have a good anti-stigma campaign in place.
Now, this council, National Council of Mental Well-Being, I understand Lifeways is part of the council. What is this? What is the council, and what does it do?
It's a membership organization. They advocate for its members. There's 3,300 members in the United States of America. We have about 168 members, I believe, in the state of Michigan. Those members, by being members of the council, they have a conference once a year where they bring in speakers that talk about the latest treatment and the latest kinds of things that are available for people suffering from mental illness and substance use disorder. Also, the council advocates in Washington for new laws and new policies to help make it easier for people suffering from mental illness to receive treatment.
And this pandemic we just are at the end of has created a whole new set of problems for mental health providers. We're seeing and hearing about more children and teens with mental health issues, either as a result of the pandemic or made worse because they haven't been able to get the treatment during the pandemic.
Well, one of the things that's happened is a couple of different things. The pandemic has really traumatized a lot of people, adults and children. The adults didn't know whether they were going to work again. They didn't know whether they were going to get sick. They didn't know how to keep their families safe. They didn't know if they were going to keep their homes and their cars, all the things they worked for. So it was very traumatic for adults, but also for kids. And I don't want to underestimate what it did to kids. When you think about kids getting placed out of school and having to be home, not being able to interact with their friends and their family, it made it a very difficult situation for kids. And I think that we really don't want to underestimate that. So one of the things that Lifeways has done is that we've started a mental health in schools committee. So that mental health in schools committee meets on a regular basis, and we meet with school superintendents. We meet with administrators, and we also talk to people who have direct contact with the kids in school. How can we help you help them? And I don't know if you realize, but there's a lot of rules and who can go into a school building and how those services can be reimbursed. There's always, when working with the government, there's always a rule, and there's always a rule that doesn't make sense to normal people. So we try to go in there and help in the areas that we can, find common ground, find programs where we can help the folks in the schools with what's going on with the kids. But the kids that are in the schools today are having a very difficult time.
Yeah, I just noticed a couple weeks ago, or last week, with the air quality and then the boil water advisory and the kids, it's like, one thing after another, and it's not just rolling off.
It is, and actually we have, our CEO at the National Council is Chuck Ngola. He was born and raised in Michigan, and he spent a lot of time in Michigan, and actually he's coming back to Michigan later on this month, and I'm going to have lunch with him. But he knows a lot of people, and one of the things that him and I talked about is we know people who have kids at Michigan State.
Oh yeah.
Some of these folks have gone through their third school shooting, things that you and I didn't have to do in school. Imagine what this is doing to the kids. So the National Council has come up with something called mental health first aid. It's like mental health first aid that you would give somebody that's having a health crisis, maybe somebody that needs CPR. Well, this is mental health first aid. And this mental health first aid helps individuals that have been trained in it, that'll recognize what's going on, maybe get them to the right professionals they need to get to. It's a one-day training. Lifeways has trained professionals locally that do the training. They're certified. The training's about 7 to 9 hours long, and it provides those that come to the training just those extra skills they need to identify people who might be in a crisis and how to get them help. We've trained corrections officers, police officers, first responders, school teachers, administrators. We've trained all kinds of people. And now that I sit here and think about it, you don't get enough credit for bringing in nonprofits into this forum that have this platform. And bringing nonprofits into this platform and letting them talk about the services they perform out in the community, those gifts that they're giving our community through the work that they're doing at these nonprofits, I think it's really outstanding, Barton. I don't think you get enough credit for that. And I would encourage you and all your staff to take mental health first aid. You guys are out there, you're at games, you're at community events, you see people, and we'd love to have you take the training. And I'll have my Karen talk to your Karen, and we'll be glad to make that happen for you guys at no charge, because I think There'd be no greater ambassador for mental health first aid than the people here at JTV.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll do that.
You're welcome.
And there is really a need for people in the community to participate in everyone's health, particularly now because we're seeing shortage of, well, we saw this during the pandemic. There's not enough nurses, there's not enough this, and it's the same with mental health care too.
The workforce really took a hit during the pandemic. You know, as you said, there are specialized nursing. So if you look at a nursing home, for instance, my sister's in a nursing home in Grand Rapids, and I just talked to their head of nursing over the holiday weekend, and there was a problem there having enough nursing staff to get my sister out of bed at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. She was still in bed because they were so short-handed. And it's a very good nursing home. So this is a problem at all levels of care, particularly for mental health homes. There are mental health nurses, there are mental health CNAs, there are mental health doctors, but the direct care workers, the people that you see in the grocery store with our consumers, that you see going into the homes, they work all night, they take care of them, they change their diapers, they feed them, they wash them, they clothe them, they do their laundry, all these things that these folks do, the kind of money they're paid for that is not even close to a livable wage. And I just saw in the governor's budget, they put in 83 cents an hour raise, so that might get some of those folks up to $13, $14, $15 an hour. It's a crime what we pay them, and anytime you see an elected official, lobby them and talk to them about, hey, take care of these people, these direct care workers. They're the most important people we have in our system, and they're taking care of the most vulnerable population that we have in our communities.
Yeah, last week your CEO, Mary Beth Leonard, sent out an appeal asking for people to contact their legislators to make improvements in the pay structure of care workers. So, yeah. Well, we congratulate you on your appointment. We'll be anxious to hear how things go and how the council and Lifeways work together in the coming year.
Well, I appreciate that, and let us know how you guys like mental health first aid training. I think you'll really be affected by what you see in it, and I think you'll like it.
Will do. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Ed Woods from Lifeways and newly named chair of the National Council of Mental Well-Being. Up next here